information shared on Girl Pray On It is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Although I am a licensed mental health counselor, I'm not your therapist. Unless, of course, you're one of my clients. In that case, I am your therapist, and I'll see you in our next session. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapeutic relationship between us. If you are experiencing emotional distress or a mental health crisis, please seek support from a licensed mental health provider in your area or contact a crisis line. Always pray on it, and also reach out when you need help.
But not to us. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
we are definitely hanging in
We're
there.
hanging in there. So, welcome to Girl Pray On It.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Ayesha. Today we're talking about my least favorite topic.
Your least favorite topic?
Yeah, what do you think that is?
Oh, it starts with an M and it ends with an N.
Yeah, men. It's not that they're my least favorite topic, it's that they're the hardest to change. They're the hardest to get to where we need them to be. You're a therapist, right?
I am.
How many men do you therapize on?
Yeah. Okay, so I've been in practice for about 4 years now.
Okay.
And I would say that it's very heavily skewed toward women. I probably have 70% of my clients are women. Maybe 10% are couples. No, I would say maybe 20% are couples and then 10% are men.
That's so bad. That is so bad. Why do you
Throughout
think
my
that is?
career, I've probably had a handful of male clients.
Okay, why do you think that is?
I think there is still a lot of stigma in not just the Muslim community, but American society even. There's still a huge stigma around therapy, and I think men are the most susceptible to that stigma. Despite sort of the way in which we've progressed as a society, there's still a belief that men should have some degree of stoicism and shouldn't have emotions or talk about emotions. So I think that's one of the things. There's still sort of a stigma for men when it comes to therapy. But I also think that men are afraid of therapy.
Why do you think that is?
I think they're afraid of what they might learn about themselves, what they might uncover. I think they are afraid of what they may have to change about themselves. I think that when I meet with couples and we have conversations and the male partner will express a hesitation around coming to therapy, it's often fear that I will judge him, fear that I will take the woman's side. So I do think there's this element of maybe men have more of a thought about keeping things to themselves, not wanting to open up to what they perceive as a stranger about their issues. I think it's probably a combination of all those things.
Yeah. You know what I think?
What's that?
I think that we have lived in a world that has catered to men for so long, and we continue to do that, that this is probably the first time in history that we are actually asking men to hold themselves accountable, look deep within, and think about how they're contributing to cycles of generational trauma, emotional lack of intelligence, right? And men know that when they have to encounter or when they start therapy, that they actually have to hold themselves accountable and that they have to change and they have to work hard to unlearn all of the horrible conditioning that the patriarchal society has told them is correct, because it's been beneficial to them as men, right? As the gatekeepers of power and knowledge historically, it's been beneficial for them to uphold this very masculine stereotype of being stoic, of not having any emotions, of if you get knocked down, just rub some dirt in it. And like the idea of boys will be boys and they don't have to be emotionally intelligent in order to become a fully functioning adult. And that's worked for a long time until now. And I think a lot of women are just like, well, I'd rather just not be with anybody than to have to deal with men who are unwilling to change, because I think for a lot of women, we've done a lot of internal work and we've had to do all of this hard work, not just internally, but also like socially, right? We've had to fight for the right to vote, to be included, to have careers, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things have lent themselves to working on ourselves as a community, but also internally. And we are much more likely to seek out therapy because of this.
I think you've hit something.
Yeah.
I will say, I think as you were speaking, and as I had previously answered your question, I was thinking to myself, the percentage of men who are coming to therapy may be higher outside of my particular anecdotal evidence,
Right.
because I do think that me being a Muslim woman may actually be a deterrent to some men, because Muslim men, maybe they feel more comfortable speaking to another Muslim man.
Probably.
Or non-Muslim men may feel that they're like shy or uncomfortable to speak to me.
Yeah.
So I will put that out there, but I think all the same still applies.
Yeah. When you think about men and the Muslim community, very few that I know openly talk about seeking out therapy.
Yeah.
And there is still a heavy stigma on therapy within the Muslim community.
Yeah.
And so I think we are now just beginning the process of getting men within the Muslim community to start thinking about therapy. And oftentimes it happens in the context of marriage therapy, unfortunately, rather than individual therapy. Yeah. When in fact, if more men went to individual therapy, you would probably not have to go to couples counseling. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think you brought up a really good point, which is that in the Muslim community and even in the non-Muslim community, I think that for a lot of men, they're coming to therapy as an ultimatum from their wife or girlfriend. And oftentimes therapy is this last-ditch effort before a couple splits up. And that's how we are sort of perpetuating that stereotype, because that is seemingly what it is, and it's not what it has to be. I think we should be thinking as therapy as a preventative tool as well, as you had alluded to, that if we went to therapy, maybe we could avoid couples counseling in the first place. I think that therapy should be considered a preventative measure, not just a last-ditch effort to save a marriage or because there's an extreme problem within a family.
Yeah, 100%. So I think for a lot of the Muslim community, but specifically for Muslim men, the context of therapy that they are most aware of is often when people have very extreme mental health diagnoses, like they are quote unquote crazy. They have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and they've had kind of mental health breakdowns and have needed to be hospitalized. And that's the context for a lot of Muslims when they think of the suggestion of going to therapy. So I'm wondering, if you were speaking to a group of Muslim men to tell them about therapy, what would be your 30-second pitch to them?
I would say it's absolutely not just for people who are experiencing a mental health crisis, but it is also a place for you to understand yourself better, to examine your beliefs, to examine your framework and understanding of yourself, so that you can better be equipped to interact with the people in your life. You can improve your relationships, and you can walk through life with more of a sense of understanding about yourself and the world around you. It will enhance your communication skills. It can enhance your relationships and generally improve your mental health. Even if you're not going through a mental health crisis, everyone benefits from having good practices in their life to encourage mental health. So you will learn coping skills and strategies for your emotions and for difficult experiences, and generally learning how to move through the world with a heightened awareness of yourself.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Why do you think it's so important that men seek mental health treatment?
Oh my God. Okay. Particularly because men often tend to be the leaders within our community. I think it's important for men to not re traumatize the people in their life with unhealed traumas. But I also think that it's important because the same way that we think about, like, from an Islamic perspective, about balance, right? Spiritually, right? From a spiritual perspective, you want for your iman to be healthy, right? From a bodily perspective, you should be eating right, taking care of your body, right? From a social perspective, you should be taking care of the people around you, right? And I want us to have that same balanced approach to our mental health and thinking about if you're taking care of your iman and your body and the people around you and your financial health and your educational health and all of these things, why not also include mental health as a part of that, right?
Yeah.
So you can be a well-rounded individual who's taking care of all parts of the self rather than just 2 or 3 parts. And so what I hear from my friends and people that I'm around, oftentimes it is women who are having to teach their husbands how to be emotionally available, how to be emotionally intelligent, how to talk about the issues that are going on for them, how to even just how to name emotions, right? Oftentimes it is the wife's like duty to kind of carry this major emotional load for the husband and help him learn how to do all of these things when all of that work could have been done before marriage and ideally should have been done in the rearing of that person, of that man, right? If we are attempting to be good parents, we want to raise emotionally intelligent kids. We want to raise emotionally available kids, right? And so one of the ways that we can start to heal our communities is by having men go into individual therapy and work out some of these generational family traumas that have been passed down and haven't been worked through. In the therapy room, you can talk about what it is to name your emotions, to be able to even identify your emotions. I think for a lot of men, anger and frustration is the primary emotion.
Yeah.
When those of us who have been in therapy know that anger is a secondary emotion, right? And that there's always a primary emotion that is driving that anger or that frustration. And a lot of men can't name what those emotions are, right?
Yeah.
And you need to be able to do that in order to have a functioning relationship with literally anyone, but especially your spouse, right?
Yes.
And we want fathers who are going to model that for their children, right? And be able to name those emotions, be able to identify when they're triggered, and choose differently, choose how to act differently in a relationship with either their wife or their child, right? So that we're not continuing to perpetuate these generational traumas that have been passed down from 25 generations. A lot of Muslims and Muslim communities are coming from the old country, and there are issues that have plagued that area or plagued that country that have epigenetically affected your ancestors and the people who came before you and are now affecting you that you also need to work on, right?
Yeah.
And so, especially if you're coming from a country where you have experienced war, famine, any number of issues, you need to work on those things as well. And it's not fair to start a family without having worked through some of those traumas. That's my view. I could go on for days and days, but I really see the direct impact of when men don't handle their own individual problems and it becomes a family problem.
Yeah. So one thing that you had shared that really stood out to me was about anger as a frequent emotion for men. And I think that in a lot of communities and I think in a lot of cultures, anger is the only acceptable emotion
Mhm.
that men feel they can experience.
Mhm.
And as you had mentioned, there's usually something that's underneath that anger.
Right.
So in therapy with men, I think a lot of what we do early on and foundationally is just identifying and labeling emotions and having some education around emotions and feelings. That's, I think, kind of the first step for a lot of men when they do come to therapy is learning the vocabulary around emotions, learning to identify when different emotions are coming up aside from anger.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I'm worried about, and you had actually brought this up in a previous podcast, is men weaponizing therapy language.
Yeah.
How do we prevent that? How do we make sure that they're getting the help that they need, but they're not weaponizing it against us in ways that are unhealthy or toxic?
Yeah. I think that is very much dependent on the therapist that they're seeing. So in therapy, there needs to be a healthy dose of empathy and unconditional positive regard, which is being just totally non-judgmental, empathetic, kind toward the client, combined with being challenged. So I think if a therapist is only using empathy, only using positive regard, only ever validating their client, that's where potentially we could run into some harm. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing as a therapist by embodying those characteristics and traits. And of course, those are amazing skill sets for being a good therapist. But I do think that there's a lot of importance in being challenged in the therapy room. And that's the difference, in my opinion. So a therapist who's willing to call out certain behaviors, a therapist who's willing to challenge their clients' bias, and in this case, it may be challenging a male client's misogyny or challenging sexism or whatever it might be. And so I think, and this is not just for men, obviously, this should be for women too. We need therapists to challenge us to examine the thoughts that we're having and maybe see other perspectives. So I think that's what my answer is. I do think a lot of it falls on the therapist to challenge their clients, which is not always an easy thing to do, but is really important for the work.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to hold each other accountable as well.
Yeah.
In our relationships, we need to hold each other accountable, and it's not enough just to go to therapy.
Yeah.
You can't just go to therapy and say, I'm in therapy, so I'm good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You have to actually put in the work.
Yeah. Therapy is half the battle. Nothing happens if you don't do anything dedicated in your actual day-to-day life when you're interacting with people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just because you're going to therapy doesn't mean that automatically you're not experiencing issues. I think, like you said, there's work that happens in the therapy room and there's work that happens outside of the therapy room. And hopefully you're applying what you've learned in therapy to your outside relationships. And so, yeah, I think that therapy is not meant to be easy. Therapy is hard, it's challenging, but that's where the magic happens in opening up, in being vulnerable, in connecting with your therapist, in having a connection, in being open-minded, in talking, and in being willing to be self-reflective and willing to see the things about yourself that you maybe don't necessarily like and are trying to change.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I believe that all men need therapy because we are all victims of the patriarchy, of capitalism, of non-Islamic programming. And I heavily encourage people to seek out not just a therapist, but a therapist who understands the cultural nuances of your background, right? And even one who understands Islam and the tenets of the faith. And I have worked with Muslim therapists specifically through the Khalil Center, and they're all around the country, and I think even in Canada. But they're a really great resource for people who are wanting to work on their mental health and also wanting an Islamic perspective alongside of that. And they have individual therapy, couples counseling, family therapy, all of that great stuff. So I think our listeners should also check them out as well.
Love that.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I think everyone needs therapy, not just men. But I think
men
that
especially.
I think that women tend to already kind of be dominating the therapy space. I think we need more men in therapy, but
Yeah.
everyone can benefit it. Anyone can benefit from it. It's therapy is for anyone. Therapy is for everyone. Everyone should try it at least once. I already have the gals in my therapy room. I
Yeah.
want the guys too.
Yeah, exactly. I wholeheartedly believe that everybody in the world needs therapy because we would have a lot less problems in the world if we had more people going to individual therapy. But the reason why I'm so focused on men, and specifically men in our community, in the Muslim community, is because we have some really misogynistic tendencies. We have very patriarchal tendencies within the Muslim community that can't be healed until men heal themselves, right? And one of the ways that they can do that is in a therapy room. We talk on this podcast a lot about marriage. We talk about relationships. And I think really all Muslims, before they enter into marriage, should seek out therapy to learn more about themselves, to learn more about what their triggers are, to start to heal some of those triggers, heal some of those traumas before you enter into a relationship, so that you're bringing your full and best self and your healed self into that marriage, and hopefully you'll have less issues in that marriage. Yeah.
Totally.
Anything else you wanted to say?
I just want to say that I'm sure there's a lot of men out there who don't feel comfortable speaking to a female therapist, which is completely fine. I know that there's a lot of online courses and options, such as Sheikh Abdullah Aduro is amazing. I always send you his stuff.
Yeah.
He's wonderful, and he is really a wonderful example of the sunnah and how men should be treating their wives. And so I think a lot of imams or a lot of sheikhs are also qualified to be counselors as well. And so if that's a route that you're more comfortable with, like that can be an option too. So I think your only option for therapy is not necessarily coming to someone like me. You can absolutely seek out leaders in your community and see what their qualifications are and if they're able to provide counseling as well. But also just check out the work that Sheikh Abdullah Abduro does, because he's really great, and he's a really wonderful role model, I think, for young men.
Yeah, 100%. And because this podcast is geared more towards women and Muslim women specifically, I really want the listeners who are watching or listening to this podcast to have some conversations with the men in your life and encourage them to seek therapy, because I think we can say it, but if they hear it from someone who loves them, someone who cares for them, whether that's your brother, your own son, your husband, your dad, your uncle, whatever, encourage them to seek therapy. Be kind and gentle in your approach with them so that they understand that it's not that they're crazy or that something is inherently wrong with them that they need to fix, but rather you want them to be their best self and show up in your family as their best self, and therapy might be one of those ways that they can do that.
Yeah. But you have to be willing to do it too.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
That's something that I see where women will be like, you have to go to therapy. That's my condition to be married and to stay married. But are you in therapy? And I think most of the time, yes. But if you're not, I think you have to lead by example. Mothers, we need to lead by example and show our children, our sons, that therapy is a good thing, that it's useful, that it's helpful. And so we have to be the role models toward the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for the segment.
They're going to say that we need to stay in our own lane.
You know what? But here's the problem. You make your problems our problems.
Yeah, valid.
Yeah, so we have to help you with the solution. So you're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So we are back with our listener letter section. And if there's a problem or an issue that you are facing and you would like us to give our opinion on it, you can send an email to girlprayonitpod@gmail.com. Yeah, and
sounds good.
we might just read it on the podcast.
Yes, we might.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This person says, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I am 32 and my husband is 37. We've been married for 10 plus years with one kid. We married pretty young and didn't know much about emotional intelligence, childhood trauma, generational wounds, and therapy. We realize now the effects of it on our marriage, and we're both trying to heal to keep our marriage going, but somewhere on the sly, we're both kind of fed up with each other. Lately, my husband has been wanting to talk about his trauma and open up to me, but I feel like there's a million things on my mind as I'm a stay-at-home mom. I feel like I've typically been more open and emotionally available than him, which he dismissed over and over again, that I no longer want to talk to him about his emotional things. And now his opening up has annoyed me. I feel like his therapist. He says I know what to say to help him through his issues, to keep him motivated and respected. I'm trying to keep this short, but how do I explain to him that I want emotional availability, love, affection, and not to handle his childhood traumas? I'm worried he's going to go the route of divorce if I can't be there for him. He wants to talk to me, but at the same time neglects me when I need him. Talking has become a one-way street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely sounds like there is trauma even within the relationship, that there is a lack of safety. Especially, I think what stood out to me at the end is you saying you're scared that he's going to divorce you if you don't listen to his problems.
Yeah.
I think there's obviously some trauma that's coming up for you there. There's a lack of stability or insecurity or a fear around him leaving. So already there's a little bit of an anxious attachment coming up. So you said it yourself, there's some trauma on both of your ends. You're absolutely correct in that you are not his therapist, and he needs to have his own therapist in order to talk about these problems. But that doesn't mean that the two of you should never have these conversations,
Right.
because obviously it is important to be able to talk through these things with your partner, especially if you're getting triggered. But I think, maybe there needs to be a conversation about what that line is. What is the boundary? When does it cross into you becoming his therapist territory?
Yeah.
So ideally, both of you would be able to have conversations about your experiences. And I think it's relevant to the relationship, obviously, if those experiences and those past traumas are coming into the relationship. Like, those are topics that should be discussed, maybe even in couples therapy, couples counseling. Those issues need to be discussed, but absolutely it should be reciprocal, that both of you feel you can talk to one another and have these conversations. So it sounds like you're feeling that it's not reciprocal, that you are hearing him out and listening to him a lot more than he is to you. And I'm sensing that this has led you to feel increasing resentment toward him. And when we have built up resentment toward our partner, there becomes a lack of empathy that we have toward our partner. It's much harder to empathize and to provide the compassion and the care when there's years maybe of resentment that's been built up, or these feelings that have been built up for a long time. So it sounds like we say this every podcast, but it sounds like you could benefit for sure from couples counseling, and also, but both of you would benefit from individual counseling. And you're correct that you're not his therapist. He needs to have his own space to talk about these things, but that doesn't mean that you should never talk about these things.
Yeah. It sounds like he is trauma dumping on you in a way that is making you feel like you're having to hold a lot of the emotional baggage. I think also the resentment of he didn't want to talk about his feelings earlier on in the relationship, and now he does. And now it feels, okay, the floodgates are open and now I'm just going to trauma dump all over you.
Yeah.
I imagine that feels very hard for you because after wanting someone to open up for so long and now the floodgates are open, it's like you're overwhelmed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's also a stay-at-home mom, so she is also dealing with a lot on her end.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think they need the triple T solution, which is individual therapy for both of them and couples therapy together. And that will definitely help. So it sounds you guys are kind of at your wits' end with one another. And so you probably should have sought out therapy a while ago. And then you also mentioned how you're there for him, but he's not there for you. So it's not reciprocal. So that would also definitely make the trauma dumping feel super unfair and unbalanced. Definitely reach out to a therapist if you have. I think, honestly, I would encourage your husband to go into therapy first, because if you have to prioritize in terms of costs, because having three therapists can be really expensive, right? One therapist for you, one therapist for him, one therapist for as a couple. I would encourage him to go to therapy first. And then if you are able to balance it, add in the couples therapy. And then if you're able to balance it again, add in your therapist. But definitely encourage him to seek out a therapist for himself first, because hopefully that will help ease the tensions and the pressure that you feel to hold all of that emotional baggage.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we hope to hear updates from you. And just to any of our listeners or people that we've read their letters out, you can always send us updates about your situation to Girl Pray On It Pod, and we will update the listeners on that. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Great. So now's the point in the podcast where I, Ayesha, look at the camera and I rant about something that is bothering me that day, that week, that month, whatever. And today is unrelated to our topic we were talking about earlier, but I have an issue with everything becoming a subscription. I think it's getting a little bit ridiculous, and we need to stop, the oligarchs. We need more Luigis in the world. Because honestly, these CEOs and all of these people making these decisions are just so money hungry. It used to be about a good product. Now it's, I can't even use my printer without a subscription to their ink. Okay. They can just shut it off, right? Why is everything a subscription? And you know that saying where there's that quote, you'll own nothing and be happy. I'm not happy. I'm not happy because why is everything a subscription? Like, I just don't understand. And then even the subscriptions have gone and lost their minds, like Netflix, all of these streaming platforms where I can't even share it with my family now. You have to be in my household. You have to be in my direct household. And they must think that we have endless amounts of money, because it's going to get to the point where we can't afford every subscription. We're going to start having heart subscriptions, like what is that one movie where the Repo Man, where they come and they take your organs because you're leasing them from a company. You haven't seen that movie?
I haven't, but what kept coming to my mind was the Black Mirror episode recently. Did you watch the most recent season where she becomes unconscious and has to have a subscription in order to stay alive? It starts like saying ads randomly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what our life is becoming. And I just feel like it's crazy. What's the craziest subscription that you have?
I don't subscribe like hardly to anything. I'm so against it.
Wow.
I either mooch off of my parents or I find a way around it so I don't have to give money to these large corporations.
I gotta get like you. That's what I gotta do, because it's just getting to be too ridiculous. Everything is a subscription, and we've fully looped back to just now having a regular package is easier than like having a full-on subscription when it comes to like TV.
So I used to work in media before I became a therapist, and I had a supervisor and mentor who said to me, and this was, mind you, like 6 years ago, my mentor said, we're going to get to a point where it's just cheaper to have cable again.
Exactly.
And we're all going to go back to having cable or like bundling, because having so many of these different subscriptions for streaming platforms is just becoming ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's 6 years later, and I think that was very true.
Yeah. I just think that we're getting to a point where capitalism is overcapitalizing, and I need it to stop.
Yeah, I agree.
I just need I need some semblance of ownership, right?
Yeah.
Like, even when you buy movies digitally, you don't own them.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Tell me what you mean by that.
When you buy movies digitally, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you buy it,
Yeah.
right? You still technically don't own it. It could just disappear
Why?
because you don't own it.
How is it that you don't own it if you've bought it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't know. That's what it's just getting to a point.
Yeah.
It's just getting to a point.
You know, sorry, I was wrong. I do have subscription. I have an Amazon Prime subscription.
Same.
That's probably the one subscription I do indulge in.
Anyways, it's getting tiring.
Yes.
Living. You know what I mean?
I know.
But I think that's the end of our episode this
Sounds
week.
good. Yeah.
All right. We will catch you on the flippity flop. That side, bombastic side eye. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Go pray on it.
Yes. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Thank you for tuning in to the Girl Pray On It podcast. We hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on. Be sure to follow us on both Instagram and TikTok at Girl Pray On It Pod. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girl Pray On It Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen, so you'll always be up to date with our newest episodes. Stay connected, stay encouraged, and as always, girl, pray on it.